So the orbital pathway, I am a bit of a space nerd, and so this is a model that uses the metaphor of planetary motion. And so if you know anything about planetary motion, you know that mass increases gravitational pull. In other words, the bigger a thing is, the more pull it exerts on objects around it in space. That's why the sun is at the center of the solar system and all the other things orbit around it, right? And so the way that this works as a metaphor is essentially the how you answer the question, who am I? Whatever thing you place the most weight in, right? The thing that you grant the most mass is going to exert an influence on every other way that you answer the who am I question, right? And so this is a model that's meant to help you understand that there is sort of a difference between what we call a primary or core identity and secondary identities. And that simply having, let's say that as a Christian, you're the proper identity, the identity you should give the most weight is that your identity is in Christ. That's the thing that should have the most mass. That should be the sun at the center of your solar system, exerting influence on all other identity claims. That doesn't mean that all other aspects of your identity are no longer true, right? The fact that my identity is in Christ doesn't erase the fact that my identity is also as a father or as a husband, right? But what it does do is it exerts a gravitational force on these secondary identities and bends them around itself. So my understanding of what it means for me to be a husband is different because my identity is in Christ, right? So that core identity commitment bends other commitments around it. Well, you can see how this would work in other situations. Let's say my core identity was as a teacher at a school. That was the most important thing to me, right? That was my most foundational identity. Then what it might start to do is bend my other commitments around it, right? So my commitment as a husband and a father, right, might start to get bent around it because, in order to do my job as best as I possibly could, I really need to stay at school till 8, 9 p.m. every night to make sure my lesson plans for the next day are good, that the administrative tasks are taken care of, right? And because that's my most core identity, that's the thing I'm going to prioritize above all. And suddenly, I'm going to have all these reasons for why I can't be home for dinner, right? Or I can't be at my kids' events, that sort of thing. See? So the thing that you place the most weight on at the center bends your secondary identity markers around it. You can see how this would work with sexuality too, right? If the most core thing about you is your sexuality, then it's going to bend every other desire, identity, claim around it. So if the most core thing about me is that I experience attractions to the same sex, then my understanding of the Bible's claims or God's claims on my life are going to have to change to accommodate that. Now, they could change a number of ways. I could say God doesn't exist and walk away, or I could find a way to reconcile those two. And I think often what happens is that when people seek to reconcile those two, the core claim of sexual identity bends other claims around it, right? Faith, what does our faith have to say about who we are? It gets shaped by our most fundamental core commitment. So this is just a metaphor for thinking through identity. And hopefully what you walk away from it with is a sense of like, so what I don't have to say is, my identity's in Christ, so I can't say that I'm same-sex attracted and that's part of me. No, you can be honest about all sorts of parts of your identity, parts that are good and God-given, parts that are part of living in the fall, even things that are our own sinful desires, are parts of who we are, right? The thing that celebrities always say when they are caught doing something wrong is, that wasn't me, right? And that's not who I am. And you're like, well, actually, like sort of literally is who you are, right? Because you did the thing. What they're trying to say is, that's not the thing that I most want to define me, right? I don't want that to be my core commitment.